We are missing the forest for the trees in New York State. And many of our elected officials and many of our citizens, frankly, are missing the forest for the trees. New York State, especially upstate New York, is hemorrhaging people and jobs. And if you looked at upstate as its own state, if you treated it that 7 million plus people that live in this expanse of what we all call upstate, and I don't mean Mount Kisco if you're sitting in Manhattan. If you look at that 7 million people, it would have the slowest rate of population growth of any state in the nation, with the exception of North Dakota and West Virginia. Even the city of New York, if were it not for foreign immigration into the city, would have actual declines in population. People are literally leaving this state. In fact, they're not just leaving, they are stampeding out of this state. And one of the main reasons is the cost of living in New York, and taxes are a big component of that. I think we are literally on the precipice. If we have a downturn in the national economy, a slowdown which affects our, we all know, and the budget director and the commissioner know full well the dependence that New York State and city feel from Wall Street. If we have that slowdown, that $4 billion deficit we're looking at now will be substantially larger, and the deficit we're looking at in 09-10 will be in the $12 to $15 billion range, not $8 or $9 billion range as we're sitting here today. And if we do not cap the property tax, and if we do not take measures to really limit the cost of government, especially at the local level, also at the state level, we are going to have a very gloomy future indeed. In Buffalo, I sat on that control board for 3 years. I left in 06, in May of that year. One of the things that we had to do was freeze salaries. That has been very difficult. It's been very hard on the employees, etc. But frankly, there was no alternative. Just recently, the school union, the teachers union, won a lawsuit at the Supreme Court level that is being appealed that would reverse the decision of the control board in freezing step increases that workers received. The effect of that over a 4-year period, if that decision is upheld, is $130 million to the city of Buffalo and the school district. Now, guess where they're going to come if that decision is overturned? It'll throw all of the progress that we've made in Buffalo over the last 4 years out the window. And what does this go to? It goes to Triborough in large part. The fight with the school union was over whether we shifted from a multiple insurer system for health insurance to a single insurer. That change, without changing anyone's benefits whatsoever, over a 4-year period, was worth $30 million in savings to the city school system in Buffalo. $30 million, and nobody's benefits gets changed. Because of the intractability of this issue here in Albany, it seems to me that there's the ramifications to places like Buffalo and Syracuse and Rochester. Literally, when I campaigned throughout this state last year, I would go to places, and you go to the downtowns of many of our upstate cities, and it's like they set a neutron bomb off. All the buildings are there, and the people have gone. And the kind of 40-year mentality that we've had in New York about big mega projects, borrowing money, backdoor borrowing, and we're going to fund this particular thing, and we're going to bring in this number of jobs. You know what? I came to the conclusion, having supported some of those things in the past when I was in the legislature, 99.8% of the businesses in this state will never darken the door of the ESDC or the local IDA. They're making decisions not based upon who they're connected to and what lobbyists they have and their ability to influence a project. They're making decisions based upon the cost of energy, workers' comp, property taxes, income taxes. And the future for these places is going to be very gloomy unless we make these fundamental changes. I think we have to have a cap. I think the fallacy of CBC's analysis is that just look at Massachusetts. No one would say, and I'll conclude on this, no one would say that Massachusetts politically is a less liberal state than the state of New York. No one would say that the influence of public unions would be less in the state of Massachusetts than in the state of New York. Frankly, If you take the same house in Brookline, and you have an $800,000 value on that house, and you take that same house, $800,000, and put it in Manhasset or Great Neck or Scarsdale, the taxes in Brookline are 30 to 40% less. And the ironic thing is that the Prop 2.5 over 27 years in Massachusetts, they do not spend much less than we spend on K through 12 education. The cap has forced them to make different choices in terms of how they spend their money. And we cannot ignore those facts. We rank #1 in the nation, state and local taxes. Wyoming, leave that aside. It's not analogous. If we do not take dramatic action to staunch the growth with a cap on local taxes, we're going to have this continued exodus of people. And simply shifting it does not get to the fact that spending and tri-borough and things like this are simply going to add inexorably to the costs unless we have some arbitrary measure. You know, if liberal Massachusetts could have a tax cap and nobody from Teddy Kennedy to John Kerry to Deval Patrick to Bill Weld to anyone who ever was in high office in Massachusetts, none of them call for changing it. You know what? Because people realize it's work, and New York needs to do the same thing.